So testing in React. We've had a few talks at this meetup about testing React applications in general. We've talked about like the specifics of snapshot testing or the specifics of automation testing and how you can hook into particular components in the tree. But we haven't really had many talks about just testing in general in the React world. A lot of us have come from sort of a much more object-oriented world when discovering React.js. For a lot of us, it's kind of been our introduction to functional programming, to declarative programming. And so it takes a bit of a mind shift to think about how you test some of this code and before you can really kind of get it. So to give us a bit of an overview of the landscape and how we should do this properly, please welcome Alex Lobera.
Thank you very much. Very good introduction. I'm actually very excited today to be here, sharing some ideas that I actually had a few weeks ago. So I have to say this is very experimental, and I hope I get some good questions from you guys, and actually I can learn from you as you might learn from me. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Alex Lobera, and I do love JavaScript. I love React, I love GraphQL, I love UX, I love Lean. I also love dancing. Yeah, I also love my girlfriend, that's important. Yeah, I always put this thing because she thinks that I'm also always thinking of JavaScript and React. I don't know about you, if it's your case, but things change so quickly in this ecosystem, but we need to keep up, and we spend a lot of time, at least I do, reading about this stuff. And I found that every time that I have to speak publicly about JavaScript or React, if I say this, she loves that, and she's very happy. And the best thing is, I can spend more of my free time doing JavaScript. So this is a nice takeaway. So I work for Lean.js. Lean.js is a company that builds applications using JavaScript and Lean, and that's it. Simple. I also teach at the React.js Academy, which is something that I really enjoy because we spread the word and we help people to get into React. We do courses from Sydney to New York and a lot of them in Europe. And it's a very good experience. It makes me feel very good because you help people to actually grow and feels good. By the way, if you want to learn, we're doing some React Retreat. What is that? So it's basically we are bringing 20 people in a very, very beautiful house in front of a beach. And it's going to be in Lisbon. It's great weather. It's the second time we do it, and it's kind of an experience being 24/7 in a house with people like you. Oh, my God. So pretty cool. Check it out if you want. And last but not least, we are going to organize some conference, a small one, in Lisbon in November 9th and 10th. So it's reactsummit.com if you're interested. We just got this idea a few days ago, so it's a very simple website at the moment. Go there, put your email, and we'll send you some awesome stuff. OK, let's get started. So I'm going to talk about testing, unit testing, integration testing, and composition. Testing is like, why do we test, actually? Right? It's like, who here thinks testing is good? Raise your hand. Everyone, almost everyone. There's a guy there who's not raising the hand. Yeah. So, what I was going to say, yeah, so if you actually have 50% code coverage on average in your projects, keep your hands up, like you do like 50%. OK, not many of you. So, what about, so those of you guys, do you do more unit testing, keep your hands, or integration testing? Not much integration testing. OK, interesting. I like to ask these questions. I'm already learning. Thank you. So unit testing, I'm going to kind of build up. I'm going to explain a few things very quickly, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. But I'm going to go very quickly. So unit test, I have a story for you to explain what a unit test is. I went once to I got a job somewhere, and I went there the first day. And they say, OK, Alex, you said in the interview that you like testing. Yes. So we don't write tests and we have bugs. I thought, yes, makes sense. So can you help us? Can you write tests your first day? And I said, yes. So I look at the code base, some files, and everything had like, thousands lines of code. I don't know if you've been there, especially in the old JavaScript days. So I went back to my boss and I said, I cannot write unit tests. And he said, why not? And I said, well, you don't have units. I cannot do tests. Basically, you have a massive thing, right? So what I learned is that if you write good code, small pieces are easy to test. If you find yourself that those small pieces are not easy to test, maybe there is something smelling there, right? So in the React wall, what I observe is that I end up doing a lot of shallow. I shallow my components that I want to unit test because I don't want to get the whole render, the whole thing. So integration tests. So to explain this, I have another story. So I was once very lucky being trained by Kyle Simpson, and he was teaching me about some composition stuff. And then I asked him this question: do you do more unit tests or integration tests? Raise your hands. No. I said, what do you do? And he was, well, I write more integration tests. And I was like, really? It's like, why? And he said, well, units are very interesting. They are good. They are important. They do a job. But actually, they are not enough on its own. We put them together with other pieces. And then those other pieces become part of a system, something bigger that actually delivers value to the user. And that's very interesting to test. And I said, well, that actually is true. So what I find myself when I am writing integration tests in React is that I use mount, because I want to put different pieces, components together. So another concept I want to bring here is this white box testing and black box testing. So white box testing means that you know what and how the function you're trying to test does, right? You know it does something and you know how it does. On the other side, you have black box testing, where you don't know how it does the thing, but you know what it does, right? So this is very cool because you can refactor your code and your test ideally will work. So we want to do that kind of black box testing. So composition, very quickly. So this is the idea where functional composition, you have two functions, f and g, that if you want to put them together, it's kind of a Lego. As long as there is a contract that you respect, the output of one function is the input of the other one, you can put them together. So let's say you have this f and g that one returns a triangle and gets a triangle. Pop, you can put them together, so you have a new function, h, that gets a square and returns a square. Square. This is the idea. So let's get into React. So there is this higher, some definitions that I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So higher the component is a function that gets a component and returns a component. So if you think of the previous slide about composition, it's basically all those squares and rectangles are just basically components. So all your components return components. Your higher order functions we get components, return components, and so on. So you can put them together. Like this example, if you have a component called new training with some props, you can enhance this training with this GraphQL thing that you have there, line 23, and you can also use with router that will eventually provide some kind of router. So you are enhancing, you are composing line 29, you are composing your component with those guys. Right? The new training is a component, create training returns a component that goes into with router that gets another component and returns another component. That's what you export. That's what I like to see, like the onion, because in the end, you can end up having a lot of components that compose your thing. So typically, you can do it in two ways. You could say, A, just calling yourself, or B, you use a utility function that will do that for you, compose. So in this compose function, the second function gets the component that you want to enhance, and then you get as arguments all the functions, the higher order functions that you want to use. So how we implement this? This is an implementation, very simple. There are many out there, and that's one of them. So here is the first function that gets the arguments, the higher order components. Here's the component that you want to enhance. So what I'm doing is I'm going to actually clone with that thing, because I want to reverse. In composition, it goes from right to left. And then I reduce. What I'm going to do, the first, in the accumulator, I'm going to start with the component that I want to enhance. And for every iteration, I get the accumulated higher the function, I call it return, and so on. Okay, so why I'm saying this? Because how do we test actually normally these things about composition in React? Let's see this example. What I've seen many people do, and I also do it, is you export this thing and you test that thing. Who does these things? Yeah, it's usually, you export that, you test that, you're testing that unit. Okay, makes sense. So how do we test this? We can notice line 7, the curly braces. So what I'm actually not getting is not the default thing. It's just not the GraphQL and the whole thing, as I'm just getting the thing, the component I want to enhance. And so I say, OK, I shallow that component, line 14. I find the button. I click on the button. That's what's mutate called. Yes, good. It works. But this is a unit test, and it's good, but we are actually not testing the whole composition. So I thought, how can we change that? Well, you can do is actually you can mount the whole thing. Notice that now on line 7, they're not curly braces. So you're getting the whole compose thing. You mount, and you do the same thing. Well, it's not bad. The problem that I find is that when you mount, you actually execute all the components in the chain. And then also you need to start mounting because, of course, that now GraphQL needs to have something in the context and blah, blah, blah. So things get a bit more complicated. And what I see that many times, well, in this example can be kind of more extreme. You see where I'm testing if I want to test this, my app has a lot of children. So might be a lot of things going on there. So what I see is that we tend not to test that. So how many people actually test those kind of line 30? Right? So I thought, OK, I wanna do it. And I was motivated a few weeks ago, and I thought, OK, how can I do this? And I thought, let's hack the compose function, actually. So I added another function at the end, right? And that function has a parameter. So if that parameter has a key called eject, I'm not going to do anything. And actually, I'm going to tell you all the things that you wanted me to compose. That's it. So interesting now is that composition actually doesn't happen at import time. So meaning that when you on line 2, you import something, this thing is going to break because that's not a component. You didn't compose anything. So you need to actually call the function that composes the thing. Small change, but now I can choose when composition happens, and actually I can change it a little bit. And that gives me an opportunity to experiment a little bit and put some ideas I want to show you now. So what we also know is that at the end of the composition, the last component will get all the props, right? It will get, in this case, the training will get a mutate, location, history, etc. It gets those things. So if I'm composing that, I want to test that I'm actually getting those things. Because if we go back actually, in this, when we were testing this approach, I'm actually the one who provides those props. Yeah, this works, but if tomorrow someone removes line 32, my test still works, but the app doesn't. So I thought, that new training gets all the props, and I want to check if actually it's getting them. Hopefully, you're using prop types. Who uses prop types? Come on, guys, you should use prop types. Good. So I use prop types, and then I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'm going to shake things a little bit. So the idea, I think, is simple. I want just to assert that I want, in a white box approach, that my component gets all the props that it needs. All these props. So now, because I can eject, what I'm going to do is I'm going to eject. And I'm going to do something that I actually don't have to do, but I think it's nice. I want to change the component you're going to enhance. Because in case my component is called app or whatever, it has a lot of children, I don't want to execute those things, and actually that can change, and then maybe I need to mock, and things in the context because of them, blah, blah. I don't care that. So I'm going to change the component that I enhance, and I'm going to compose the thing again with the functions that I'm composing, the higher the components. So next step, I'm wrapping it into a function, the same thing. I just wrap it into a function. And I do 2 changes. The first one, line 63, I return the thing, those variables. And line 44, I create a function that when this is executed, this will be a closure, right? Line 39. So I will, line 44, that function will have access to those components, compose to that, all that stuff. But I'm exporting this guy as well. So the idea is that that get prop types errors should return an array of errors. I don't want to send the errors to the console because it's kind of impure, right? And if I want to test that, I don't want to do some dirty stuff that we'll comment now. So I just want to, call that function, and always that I give some props, I get the same errors. That's what I want to get. And then I want to do assertions on that. So here is the tricky part. Maybe, where that function, what it's going to do is basically iterate over the prop types and execute them. And you get, if there is an error, you put it into an array, and then you return the array. There is some caveat here. I'm using this thing. Don't know if you notice, but have you ever looked at that? OK. So it says that if you're going to be fired. So I didn't look at that. But it's just an implementation of the idea. If you can give me some better ideas to implement this, I'm very happy to try them out. So that was the idea that you can reuse in every application that you do if you want to test composition. Now, to make things faster in my app, I decided to create a function that does specific things for my application. In my application, I use enzyme. And you don't have to if you don't want to. And you have probably a context that is different from yours. So basically, this function is going to mount in enzyme and do the compose with fake, which is actually the name I just gave it to this guy. And what I get, and then I export those 2 things at the end. So what I get is that my get prop types will return errors, and no matter always the same props will return the same errors. And that's very nice. That's very pure. So I can, in the end, write a test like this. I can mount my component and expect that the errors are falsy. And I tried this, it's been like 4 or 5 weeks, actually. And I don't know, I'm happy it works like it's easy. I'm just doing this, and I'm covering all those composition. So I decided to put it into a package. When I did it, this was a Sunday 4 weeks ago. And I just put this compose and that compose with fake because are the ones that are generic for every application. And I put it there, and I've been very busy, and I didn't have any time to actually put any documentation. There is no example at all. So I was hoping to do something for today, but I couldn't. So if you actually like the idea, we can talk and actually code a little bit on this. So why you should care? I think it's better to catch errors in your CI than in the console, in the browser. And of course, you can mock your console error and throw an exception. But that's not very nice, I think, because that's very impure. Like you're just mocking console log. So you throw an exception. You can do that if you actually want to get your tests in your CI. But I think it's better not to do this kind of approach. And also, you can avoid rendering the whole children and your family or the family if you actually just want to test that your component gets the right props. So thank you very much. Any questions?
We do have time for questions if you have any.
I do apologize because I explained that very quickly. So, but I know you're a smart guy, so some questions.
I think you might have lucked out. No, we do.
So when you asked if anyone used prop types, I didn't raise my hand because I used TypeScript.
OK. Ooh, very good.
Which means doing things with prop types and testing for prop types, we can't use the demo that you gave us. What would your suggestion be if you couldn't use prop types?
So my suggestion would be that we can have a beer later and discuss a good solution for that case, because I don't know. Maybe 2 beers.
I'm also a recent convert to TypeScript. I'm a big fan.
Thank you. Great talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I had a question around how it could relate to the render props approach and the higher order components approach. Now, we see that these are somewhat interchangeably used. And the second question is, when you get the composition, is there a way to sort of abstract the series of higher order components that that particular component will need and just export that? And maybe, what would you name that? Or would it make sense to encapsulate the series of the higher order components that we'll go through and then maybe test every one of them individually, rather than testing if 3 or 4 or 5 of them are together? Or is there any value being gained by testing them in a series like that?
So I think you can test, and you probably could do it individually, but the thing is you will be doing unit tests. So if you actually, in that example, the new training will work if you have a router and you have a mutation. So, okay, they both separately work, but in the end, I need them together. So I want to test that my component actually receives those guys.
Thank you. Any more questions? I think we're good. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you.